You're listening to the Oracle Talk Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Sabrina Carpenter.
I'm Dasha.
Hey, I'm Billie Eilish.
What's up, guys? I'm Camila Cabello.
Hey, this is Tate McRae.
I love this station.
I love this station.
You're listening to Chasing Prophecy Radio, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. On the Oracle Talk Radio Network. Broadcasting live in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
If it's unexplainable, we're talking about it.
Whether you're a believer or a skeptic,
we cover everything where the unknown becomes the known.
And now, here are your hosts, Jenny Nicasio and Tom Callway.
Good evening and welcome to Chasing Prophecy on the Oracle Talk Radio Network, broadcasting live from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. I'm Jenny Nicasio, along with my fabulous co-host, Tom Callway.
Hello, everybody. America, how are you doing?
Yeah, I thought I put on my cowboy hat.
Well, that's good. It's good. It's a cowboy type weather, especially for me over here on the East Coast of PA.
Yeah.
I don't know about you over there.
Well, we had some. Well, it's only it's going to be 7 degrees. But right now, I think it's like 18 right now.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a little too chilly for me. It's a little too chilly. Looks like I have more than one hat on. Was it my head so big or what? Look.
No, it doesn't look like you have more than one.
Look at my hair.
You have a lot of Italian hair. You know how it is.
Oh, yeah. Well,
just finishing up our posts and shares to all of our wonderful groups that accepted us overseas and here in America.
I got this piece of string hanging from my face. What the hell is that? Oh my god!
I don't know. I don't know. We're off to a good start with our guests. We're putting our best foot forward with that one.
I'm having one of those days, okay?
Yeah.
I'm having a hair day.
A hair day.
Is that my hair or is that growing a beard on my forehead? I'm growing. Hey, Joe. I'm growing a beard on my forehead.
You're growing a beard on your forehead. Is that going to be the new thing everybody's trying?
I guess. I wasn't drinking either.
Well, that's probably why. If you were, you would have been all right.
No, I lost my. Well, I laid down. Went out to dinner with my brother, and I was all cozied up on. And then I came home and I took a nap, and then I was all ready for the show. I had eyelashes. I wear eyelashes. I had my one eyelash up there.
Must have been a good nap, man.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So you're finishing up your shares for the show. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. A lot of crazy stuff going on out there between the drones and the orbs and the fires and the killings. I mean,
plasmoids.
2025 has started off with a bang. You want to call it that? A bang? And I'm wearing my Gettysburg shirt. I'm going to tell you a story about Gettysburg.
Did you see anything?
No, I went with my son. This is back in 2023, I believe it was. I went with my son on vacation, and it was 95 degrees. He decided to stop at Gettysburg.
Okay.
On the way home. Okay. Right. From Maryland, Ocean City, Maryland. And it was 94 degrees. We just drove 4 hours, and he pulls up into Gettysburg. I get out of the car. I'm like, oh my God, it's so freaking hot. And it was like a full sun at 4:00 in the afternoon. It was horrible.
Really? Wow.
And I start having a panic attack. I walk out into the, I think it was the, where they have the graves. No, is it the grave? No, it's not the graves. It's the battlefield.
Yeah.
And I started to have like a huge panic attack. I have to leave. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. I'm freaking out. And my friend Jared was with my family. My son leaves me and Jared in the car, and Jared's drinking milk.
Oh,
He's walking around the battlefield with milk. It was so stupid. And everybody's looking at him like, you're crazy. You're drinking milk, 95 degree. I'm like, I gotta go home. I want to go home. I said, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I was just having some bad juju from the battlefield. I had to get out of there. I did not enjoy myself one bit. So that's my experience at Gettysburg. And I think I probably ruined it for everybody because they're all excited. They want to go. I wanted to go to the Mary, what's her name? You know who I'm talking about. The Jenny Lynn house.
Okay.
You know the story about Jenny? I think it's Jenny Lynn. I'm sure our guest knows what I'm talking about. And it just did not work out that way. But anyways, that's my schmill. I'm crazy. I don't know what's wrong with me. You know what's wrong with me? The full moon is coming up.
It is coming up. That's true. It's actually supposed to be here shortly.
What?
Yeah, it's coming up. I mean, we had the new moon. Can't remember when it was, but yeah. Remember how weird you were last month when there was 2 full moons?
Oh God, I was out of my mind. I have a lot of stress going on with my dog. You know that. And I think I've been up since 4:30 in the morning. So if anybody ever gets up like 4:30 in the morning, and the nap that I did take was like 5 minutes. It wasn't even a good nap. But I'm here.
She's here.
I'm here. I have on my multiple hats. I just don't know what hat to wear. Joe, I came here for you, my love. Oops, don't say that. I'll get in trouble.
What do you have 2 hats for? Jenny, 2 hats.
I have like 5. You should see how many hats I have in here. I'm the fat lady. I said, my poor family, when I die, all these hats are probably gonna be haunted. So they're gonna have to get to mine.
Would that be your object to haunt?
Probably. A hat? There's so many freaking hats. If you only knew how many hats I have.
Huh. I have to think for me.
But this piece of hair is bothering me. Okay, let's get on with the show before our guest leaves.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm just
poor guy. We already wasted enough of his time.
I'm just out of my mind tonight.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe loves hats and boots. We know about the boots, Joe. We saw your boots.
I have boots too.
Very clever. Too.
I got the kind that I have a couple pair that go over your thigh. And don't ask me why. I'm not a thigh high lady, but I have 100. If you only knew how many shoes I have, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a freak.
Huh. See, we learn more about you every week. You're going to come from like a
You know what? You don't want to know me because I have multiple personalities.
Well, that's all right.
This piece of hair is going to go out. I'm going to get it, cut it off before the end of the show.
How about that? Yeah.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. I'm losing my mind. Help me.
Well,
Mr.
on that
Predictor.
note, let's get to Mr. Predictor. Did Jenny lose her mind?
Am I losing my mind?
There is no doubt.
Yeah, we all know.
It's a
okay, let's get on with the show before we lose viewers.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a wonderful guest today, Thomas White. He is a university archivist and curator of the special collections at Duquesne University and an adjunct professor of history in Duquesne's history department. He is also an adjunct professor of history at Roche University, where he teaches folklore and mythology. White is the award-winning author of 11 books, including Legends and Lore of Western Pennsylvania, Witches of Pennsylvania, Occult History, and Lore and Supernatural Lore of Pennsylvania, Ghosts, Monsters, and Miracles. So, without further ado, go ahead, Jenny. Let's go ahead and bring on Thomas White.
Yes, Thomas White. I saw Thomas White's book again in Barnes & Noble in the front of the store. Mine is in the back of the store, but his is in the front of the store. What's that about,
Huh.
Tom?
So yeah,
Oh, I
Tom,
don't know.
what's going on with that? You got to have a word.
Yeah, I don't know. I have people, I think, move them to the front. I don't know. So, well, thanks for having me on.
It's a good idea. Just take yours and and go around.
Move them around.
Not a bad idea. So, Thomas, this is my first time talking to you, so I'm thankful for you being on the on the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And 11 books. Wow. I mean that's nothing.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, Jenny's an author. I'm an author. But I can't imagine getting to 11. My goodness. But all of your stuff, Legends and Lore of Western Pennsylvania, which is, let me ask you this.
Sure.
What made you want to get into that genre?
It's kind of something I've always been interested in. I think a lot of people that like this kind of stuff, something happens when you're a kid and you just like it. You know what I mean? You're interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I become, I went to school for history, but growing up, I'd always been interested in like local ghost stories and legends. And back then it was harder, there was no internet. So you just you had to stumble upon them, you had to find somebody that knew the story. But I went to school for history and I studied a variety of things, including kind of like the history of religion and popular beliefs, but things like apocalyptic movements and why people believe conspiracy theories and things like that. And then when I started working at the Heinz History Center for a few years before I went to Duquesne, I was there for about 6 years. I was, and that's one of the 10 largest history museums in the country. I was in the archives there, and I just was thinking about these legends. I thought, well, I'm here. Why don't I just look up the real story behind them and then find out what's the real history, and then kind of look at the folklore, but then also kind of go visit these places and see what happens. And I kind of went from there. But like growing up, like there was I also had like occasional weird experiences, and like my mother would have things like precognitive dreams and things like that. So so it it's the kind of thing, it was kind of always there somewhere. And so I just kind of realized I could just do this for a lot of my time investigating these things. So
it's cool.
That is really cool. And Jenny, that's something we do hear from guests a lot, that it is from the early on, and then it's carried out throughout your whole life. And especially in a positive environment, like with your, if it's okay with the family, it's more likely to be okay, to talk about with, the kids and things like that, because we have had the opposite here, where people are like, no, it was never talked about in our house. So that's what made me like it more. You know what I mean?
My mom had some crazy stuff in our house. I'm like, your mom was probably like mine, Tom. She was into Edgar Casey. So she had his book,
yeah.
And then she had this whole encyclopedia on the occult. So, but she was all into that. Like precognition, like you said, like she's a little, I probably got it from her. But go ahead, tell us some stories, some strange stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there's all kinds of weird. Pennsylvania's got so many weird stories, and one of the reasons I like doing work in Pennsylvania is because one of the things I try to do is bridge the gap between like people's experience and then academic folklore. My master's degree was in public history, which is actually how people experience history, and like taking academic history and combining it with how people experience it, and then which then a lot of folklore and legends and these kind of things emerge there. But Pennsylvania is really interesting because folk traditions throughout the U.S. are usually the basis of people's beliefs and how we react to things, right? Like if you hear weird noises in an old house, you assume it's a ghost because that's our culture, right? Or you think there's something wrong, but somewhere, even if you don't believe in ghosts, if you hear like creaking upstairs in an old house, ghost is one of the one or two things that pops into your head. A lot of other people think serial killer or somebody breaking into my house, but because of our culture, right? So a lot of things are framed by that. So, Pennsylvania is at the crossroads of all these American folk traditions. Back in the 70s, they mapped how these traditions spread around the country. So aside from the stuff that just stayed in the deep South, and the stuff that came from like Russia and China down, and up from Mexico on the West Coast, almost all other folk traditions in America funneled into Pennsylvania. Then they all came to a point essentially in Pittsburgh. because we were the original gateway of the West, and then it kind of spread out back across the country. So there's this kind of diagram from the 70s that shows how this worked. And so so many different people, belief systems were here that, and plus we had relative religious freedom compared to other colonies. We had, the Quakers were fairly tolerant of almost anybody. Very early on, you had groups like the Hermits of Wissahickon, who were kind of alchemist monks waiting for the end of the world that lived, on the fringes of Philadelphia and Wissahickon Creek. You had, you had a whole variety of beliefs that thrived here. Authentic werewolf legends, European style werewolf legends. You had mentioned the full moon in the beginning, and it made me think of those right away. But there's a lot of them. People don't realize there's dozens of them here, and so it kind of lays a groundwork for all this weird stuff that happens from the very beginning all the way up until now. We go from things like these hermits that were here in the 1680s up into people experiencing. You had mentioned the drones. My brother lives in Chester County, and he spent a whole week filming drones flying over his house.
Oh wow!
He'd go out and film them flying over. Yeah. So Chester has a few werewolf stories too, actually.
Yeah. Well, where in Chester County does he live? Because that's where I live.
He lives near Malvern, out in that area, Malvern, Paoli area.
Yeah, I live in Westchester. That's about 15 minutes from me. That's awesome. Yeah. There's been quite a few drone sightings. I've been keeping Jenny updated. If he's been around here, he's seen them near the hospitals, and you can't fly over those with anything, let alone drones. So it's been crazy, but it's so cool. Another close story. Hear that, Joe? We have someone else on our side of PA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it reminds me of things, and you see these kind of cycling, they tend to call them in the academic terms like panics. They call them, not in the sense that people are panicking, but there's these fears that emerge, But often, and often there's a tendency to dismiss them all as people just overreacting. But most of the time, there's some basis for it, even if it does get blown out of proportion. Obviously, these drones are real. I mean, they're
they are.
But it reminds me of things like the black helicopter panics from the late 1990s, or and people actually saw those. And some were real military exercises, some weren't. I know here in Pittsburgh, there was a big scare in the Mon Valley near Braddock, and around 1998, where these black helicopters showed up. Unannounced, and they claimed they were supposed to tell people, and they never did. But it feeds into that. In 1981, we had the evil clown panic in Pittsburgh, where people.
That was a smiley face.
Yeah,
remember the smiley face thing that was going around?
Smiley face killer. Yeah,
killer. Yeah, there's a serial killer.
Yeah, in fact, there were two students from Duquesne where I teach. Were two grad students were two of the supposed alleged Pittsburgh victims. They were both found in the river. They kind of disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And, so there's these things that float out there, and I often tell people when you're doing this stuff, and I try to be as skeptical as possible when I approach it, but I'm not 100% skeptic. I've had plenty of weird stuff happen to me. And often you find these things, there's layers to them, and there's often something a little bit that's real somewhere, even if it's blown out of proportion. There's something really going on. And I even tell people, in the 80s, you had things like the Satanic Panic, which influenced a lot of folklore in America. When Geraldo went on TV and basically said everyone on the missing persons list was abducted by Satanists, and if you listen to Ozzy Osbourne, you're a Satanist, and it all got blown out of proportion.
Wow.
But people forget that there were a handful of real cult killings. And there were, the Chicago Rippers. They killed a bunch of people. Yeah. The Matamoros case in Mexico, which was black magic. So there were a handful of real things, and then things that people thought were real were presented as real. And so you had this kind of thing where once some stuff was determined to be fake, they just dismiss all of it. And that's that's often the case. You see that in these types of things.
That's very true, because all they have to do when you deal with something in such a belief way that we're not factual, we're not scientific that way, all they have to do is prove one of the portions not accurate to throw the whole thing away. We have, if you think about 10 out of 10, we have to prove 10 out of 10. They just need to take 1 out of 10. You know what I mean? And that's the issue with when you deal with this. And I throw a call out. We talk about it all the time. I throw a call out to everybody who's in this realm is, hey, be more skeptical than the skeptics. You know what I mean? I preach that, you know what I mean? Because if we lose credibility, we lose everything, Yeah. So I see Nicole checking in. Nicole, I saw your message before. Thank you for checking in. You're safe from the fires out west.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it's crazy. We'll talk about that a little later, but I'm glad you're safe down there in SoCal. She asks, if you know, please chime in. Do you are the black helicopters part of the government or MIB?
Well, that was a big thing in the late 90s. When I was doing a lot of research on conspiracy theories when that happened. I remember when the black helicopter stuff happened. It was interesting because it was kind of during the whole kind of idea. They first emerged actually in conjunction with cattle mutilations in the 80s. Yep. And then you have black helicopter panics during the 90s when there was the kind of belief that there was going to be the whole New World Order thing, that they were building camps, and like there was a rumor that there was a camp being built in Allegheny National Forest and things like that. And that there was going to be one world government, that type of thing. Which
don't you think? I think that's going to happen.
Well, I think
they want that to happen, don't you?
There were definitely people that wanted it to happen. I think what happens here is there were people moving that direction. Then people got afraid it was going to happen really fast, and someone was going to take over immediately, and then that's where the black helicopters came in. But the government does, in fact, use black helicopters for lots of things. Military helicopters are black. Yeah. So if there's something weird going on that they don't want you to know, and you see a helicopter fly by, they're trying to cover something up. Chances are it's going to be a black helicopter. And that's what showed up. And the interesting thing in the Mon Valley, one thing that and this is why I try to look at this from multiple angles. In the late 90s, there was a conservative radio host in Pittsburgh named Jim Quinn, and he broadcasting out of Braddock, and he talked a lot about this stuff. And he was, in fact, he had exposed a few things back. That was when the Drudge Report had just come on the scene. But he had a few contacts, I think, that had exposed some things about Clinton before it was on the Drudge Report even. And he had talked about these helicopters, and people would call in all the time. And what happened was that the radio station he broadcast from was in Braddock. And so that's where these helicopters showed up. And it was almost like, allegedly they were supposed to warn everybody. There was like a woman that went into labor because the helicopter was 10 feet above her roof and she didn't know what was going on and things like that. So, part of me often wonders if it wasn't like, a little bit of an intimidation tactic.
Probably,
in response to what he was doing, or what he was talking about. So it's, it's one of those things where even if there's explanations, there's often other layers to things that go on. And, they often, the more you peel back, the more layers you realize nobody's really quite sure what's going on, or nobody knows what's going on. That's the other thing, sometimes. And but people like to pretend they know what's going on. So so it creates a lot of these things become very complex. And so that's the beauty of studying these legends. You start taking pieces apart, and things become they're different than you thought. A good example I always use of this is a lot of what I study is like ghost stories and legends as well. Mm-hmm. So in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, there's a allegedly haunted road, and I have a book called Haunted Roads of Western Pennsylvania. I talk about this and the book is the road is called Blue Mist Road. Its real name is Irwin Road, and it has a whole bunch of legends that developed over the years. In fact, it's one of the things that got me into this because I used to hear this legend in high school. And what I had heard initially in the 80s was that there was a satanic cult on the road and they were sacrificing people. But the road was also haunted, but I wasn't too familiar with the stories at the time. Mm-hmm. But I did research. I found out the earliest stories from the early 70s were about a car that drove down the road and a family was there, and there was a drunk driver that came the other way. They drove off the road and crashed. And if you could drive, and that's before they closed the road. By the 80s, they closed the road off with really little explanation. And it was a very narrow road anyway. So in the early 80s, there was this or early 70s, this family was allegedly killed on the road by a drunk driver. And if you drove your car down there when you could still drive it and put it in neutral, the ghosts of the victims would push your car uphill away from the scene. Yeah. And there was also at the other end of the road's about 3 miles long. Now it's mostly a walking trail. it's still a road, but it's mostly just owned by either North Park or Allegheny Land Trust. At the other end, there's a little part that has houses at the end, and then there's a cemetery across the street called Crossroads Cemetery, which crossroads always have an occult connotation. But in that cemetery, there were two tombstones that leaned toward each other. And when they leaned together, so allegedly the original story was that under a full moon at midnight, they would touch, right?
No.
These are pretty harmless stories. But then by the mid to late 70s, there were legends appearing that the Ku Klux Klan was meeting on the road, and they were hanging people. And there was a hanging tree, and the tree allegedly, and there were various candidates. There used to be a lot more trees that would hang over the road, but the hanging tree would again bleed under the full moon. But if you were walking down this road and you see someone kind of standing off to the side under a tree, and you approach them, they vanish. You also know you found the hanging tree. That's the ghost of the last victim. And then there was a legend that, in these stories, the Klan traditionally would be going after, the real Klan would go after immigrants, African Americans, Catholics, Jews. In this story, anybody could be a victim because you found their secret spot where they hang people, according to the legend, But then there was a story in the early 80s that a couple was driving down the road. And this will probably sound very familiar to you, just like the car pushed uphill. That was driving down the road, and the car stopped, and it broke down, basically. And the husband gets out, looks under the hood. He says, "I can't fix this. You wait in the car. I'm going to walk up the road and get help." Well, he walks up the road. Half an hour passes. An hour passes. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Finally, the wife hears scraping on the roof. The car panics, gets out, and realizes it's her husband hanging from the tree. The car had broken down under the hanging tree. It was the tips of his toes scraping against the roof. She screams, runs off, disappears into the darkness, never seen again. Of course, it makes you wonder who told the story at that point, but you're not supposed to think of that. Yeah. But then by the 1980s, though, that's when you had the late 80s, especially the stories of the satanic cults that were inhabiting these ruins. They called the cult house or the witch house, which was actually a big set of stone ruins that were part of the property that the arborists who originally planted the trees in the park used. And there's this big, massive structure that's collapsed back there, and it's still there in ruins. But supposedly that's where satanic cults would meet, and they would sacrifice people. And back in the 80s, and I had teachers tell me, like, don't go out to that road. They'd hear us talking about it. They'd be like, there's a satanic cult on the road, and some kid from some other school district disappeared. You couldn't check back then, So the teachers started taking it seriously, telling you some kid disappeared. And then supposedly then they also summoned things, like demons, and people would allegedly find bipedal hoof prints and things like that, and in the mud. And so, and then of course they also sacrificed victims. So the ghosts of their victims would be there, plus the ghost of the Klan. It was basically like an evil timeshare by that point. The ghost of the Klan victims. All these ghosts were supposedly haunting the road. And then there's a whole bunch of other side stories about half man, half deer, and all these other weird things. Yeah. And as you approach the year 2000, the story about the tombstones changed, that they didn't touch under a full moon. They just inched closer and closer together. And when they finally touched, the world would end. And, as you got near the year 2000, that was the legend.
That's a big thing.
And then it changed back after about 2 or 3 years after 2000. It changed back to the original legend, as most people told it. And then by the early 2000s, all the ghost hunting groups were out there hunting, looking for all the above ghosts plus other things. And so if you look at this, and this is a good example of how, and I'll explain how this works. It's going to seem like I'm debunking it all. But we did find a car accident that happened. There really was a car accident that inspired that original story. The whole family wasn't killed, though. Just the mother and 2 children were in the back seat. And they survived. But back in the 70s, there was also another road in North Park that was not nearly as scary as this one that ran down in the woods. And by the way, the blue mist actually does look blue in headlights. There's a stream called Irwin Run that runs right along. That's actually real. It always looks blue. I don't know why. But this car accident really happened. But in North Park, there's also a gravity hill. It's an optical illusion that you're rolling uphill. And so we think back in the 70s, people heard the Gravity Hill story, and this was all word of mouth. saw the creepy road where the accident happened and merged the stories. The tombstones actually lean toward each other, so that just kind of begged itself to create stories. The hanging tree, the clan stuff. Weirdly, in the mid-'70s, clan legends pop up all over the place, like on the outer rims of the suburbs and things. And a lot of it's probably like a delayed reaction for civil rights stuff because it hadn't really rolled out that far. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to pinpoint those. The 80s, of course, is the satanic panic. So, and then, the tombstones, as you approach the year 2000, the world ending, people are afraid of that. So it seems like it's all debunked, right? It seems like it's all explainable urban legends. The problem is every time you go there, something weird happens anyway. Like one time, I always take my folklore class out there and I walk them out there. I time it so we get to the far end of the road when the sun goes down. And we walk all the way out the road. And we come back. Well, the one time we were coming back and we were in the most remote part of the road. It's about 3 miles long. And this part where there's nothing around for at least a mile or so. It was after it had rained. It was really pretty muddy. And we were on what's left of the concrete part. And we're walking back. It's dark. And we hear this splashing down in the ravine where the creek is, right? And this is the part where it's the hardest to get to. And we shine the flashlights down. There's this dog that's not on a leash running back and forth through the creek like a broken record, just back and forth and back and forth.
Wow.
And I'm thinking like, oh, crap, I hope this thing's not rabid. And I have to explain why these college kids got, have to get rabies shots. But then we realized there were feet. We shine the light over and bring it up. And there's this older couple. It looks like a modern version of, you ever see the American Gothic painting where the couple's sitting there real stern with a pitchfork? They're just standing there in the middle of nowhere. There's no path down there. I would have had a hard time getting down there. They should have been covered in mud. They're just standing there, both perfectly still side by side. No visible light. You don't see a flashlight or anything. We shine the flashlight up on their face just for a second. And the guy says, "Can you please turn out the light?"
I remember those stuff.
And then so we shut the light off and leave, But every time I take people there, like people will tell me after, they're like, I thought I saw a light keeping pace with us in the woods, or I thought I saw these other weird things that would happen. And and there were people that died in those woods. Actually, there was a hunter that had a heart attack up against a tree at one point, and people report these weird lights following them, which I often have a sense of being followed on the road, and I've walked it probably 100 times. Then I had a student doing more research about this, and she talked to her brother-in-law, who was a former McCandless cop and now later worked for the FBI. I don't know if he's still connected, but she was telling him, and she made a joke about that car story with a couple. And she was joking about it, how it's a common urban legend around the country. And he said, no, wait a minute. That's not how it happened. He said, I found her in the car. She was fine. We didn't find him for 2 days. We found him deep in the woods hanging from a tree. And then he said, they never reported it in the news, because they weren't sure if it was a suicide or not. But they know for a fact the car legitimately broke down. It wasn't faked. And the guy did not walk away with a rope or anything. And so this guy always thought the guy had been murdered by somebody. And then he also said he had caught people performing sacrifices up at that house, up at the cult house. And basically, whether they were the real cult or most of them were people trying to join the cult that they heard was there, but sacrificing animals and things up there. And so, it's one of those things where these legends have these layers where you think they're not true, but then you find out pieces of them are, just maybe not exactly the way they're told. So they're always way more complex. That I'm just scratching the surface with that legend. There's a lot more to it. But if I kept talking about it, it would fill the next 40 minutes. But it's one of those things where even the ones that seem pretty simple end up being more complicated.
Absolutely. And just resetting here, everybody, I see there's a lot more people that are tuned in right now. This is Thomas White, folklore and mythology expert out of Duquesne University. We're talking all kinds of folklore and myths from Western PA and beyond. So just resetting everybody, letting you know who you are and what you do. And Stacy is right. There is a few of these Gravity Hill illusion type things around the country too. I've heard of some. There's one in Delaware. Obviously the one that you talked about, Louisiana, all different areas where it's an illusion, but I mean, you can be staring at it and you're like, where's the illusion?
Yeah. And there's one in Bedford, PA that I don't think they've actually been able to disprove because it doesn't, like they've tried to survey it and it doesn't seem to actually be an illusion. I'm not sure. I have to follow up on that one, but I know that there's a big one in Bedford, PA, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's pretty interesting.
There's a lot of crazy. There's one in Montana. What's that one? The Gravity.
There's a Gravity
cabin?
House, right?
Yeah, Gravity
I think
House.
that's what you're talking about, where balls will look like they roll up like up this little contraption thing, and they brought. I remember seeing one of those paranormal shows where they brought like I'm just gonna use this cap as like a compass. You know what I mean? And the thing's spinning all over the place, and they were talking about portals. And is this how we, you, me, and anybody in this 3D realm look at portals? You know what I mean? Is that what that is? And we just don't know what we're looking at, really.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point. I mean, people always think, people forget we don't really, I always use this example when I'm teaching, right? Most people don't realize the color blue isn't that old, right? You might think, well, how can a color not be that old?
True.
But it's actually it was always there. But only recently in human evolution have people been able to perceive blue as a different color. And before, if you look back at like the ancient Greeks, they call it the wine dark sea, or the sky is described as actually, if you really translate it, it's gray. They don't use the color blue. And really, blue's only become super prevalent in the past 1,000 years as a separate color. It used to just be viewed as a shade of green. And it took someone, it's weird to think of that, but people couldn't recognize it as a different color until people were able to name it as a different color. And like something had to click, or people's rods in their eyes had to adapt in a certain way to see blue as something different than green, different than a shade of green. Like if we put a blue paint in with a whole bunch of shades of green, people would immediately pick it out. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because people, and they've done experiments with tribes where they don't see certain colors a lot that have been fairly isolated, but they see all different shades of green, and they can, like what looks like a solid green block to us, they can see like 10 different colors of green in it. And to us, it looks like all the same shade. And you saw this a few years ago with that stupid dress meme thing on Facebook.
The black and the gold and then the blue. That's a good point. Because like honestly, Jenny, that boggles my mind when they talk about different color. How can you possibly, I can't even think of a different color. You know what I mean? Think of a color you've never seen before. If you put me in that line with the Greeks or whatever, I wouldn't know. I'm not colorblind. I'm just saying like, oh, that's a darker blue. That's a lighter blue.
Yeah, there's so many shades of blue. It could be turquoise, aquamarine.
Yeah. And that's the thing with everything else. I mean, that's just with a color. I mean, how many other things, and they've proven now things like sound affect how we react. And there's so many things like what else can't we see that might be right there because we just don't know. We don't know to see it, or we haven't trained ourselves to see it, And so, often there's a lot that could just be there. We don't know. And people get feelings, and that's why I never dismiss when people say, you get a gut feeling about something. I mean, how many times is that right for people?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you can't understand how that mechanism works. I mean, you can't explain it, but it works, right? On a subconscious level, your body tells you something.
It's true. I mean, we've had on a lot of psychics, mediums, people in tune with the paranormal, more so on the spirits and ghost side of it, right? And, from what they say to what we say is, there are different levels of it. Some people have better senses of smell than others. Some have better hearing than others. Some have better taste. You name it, right? And our five senses were based on just keeping us alive on this damn planet, not getting eaten by predators and going to find something to eat. Sorry to ruin it, America. That's why we have for the five senses. But so people start evolving in a way where they can see more levels of the vision instead of just, a glance of the room, and they're more in tune with it, then, more power to them. But it's not crazy. I mean, there is some science to the paranormal, right? You know what I mean? There is some level of science. If there wasn't, you wouldn't be teaching. We wouldn't have different, devices that can utilize some paranormal investigators in that realm. There's things in science called ghost particles where scientists blame ghost particles because I don't see it, but I know it's there. Doesn't that sound like paranormal?
That's the thing. I
know it's there.
I always tell them with science, and as a historian, I like to point this out. And again, I have nothing against science. You know what I mean? Science is great, especially hard science like mixing chemicals. Obviously, that's true.
Yeah.
But what most people forget is most of the time through history, science has been incorrect. They just remember when they're right. Remember when they thought you could tell a criminal by the shape of their head? There was so many things that they've been incorrect or a little off, and they just say, "Oh, it's a scientific process." Well, for everyone else, if someone else does that with something, they're just wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
But when it's in the science realm, then it's just part of the process. Well, it's always part of the process. We're always learning. And the thing is, with science, like it changes constantly. And I think what happens is, if you find a true scientist, they're open to many, many different things. What we often have come to dominate the West, especially the US and Britain and places, is this idea of what they call scientism. This like almost science as a religion, where people don't really understand what science is. And they instead think science explains everything.
And
it doesn't.
If you were to believe that.
Yeah. And like half of, there's the idea of dark matter. Most of the universe is missing.
Yeah, we don't
literally most of the universe is missing. What should be there. So where is that? Where's the material?
That's a very good point, Thomas and Jenny. We've talked about that too before. Either on air or off air. But people are kind of treating science as a religion now, and this explains everything, and not, you know what I mean? When it should be a tool to help you describe the world around you. And you're right, it has been wrong. Don't ask me how many planets there are. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Isn't there?
I can't. I can't tell you how many.
Is there 8, 10?
I don't know if there's 8 or 10 now. So it's changed the planet since I've been in school.
I can't remember.
There's not 7 continents anymore. There's not 4 oceans anymore. There's different. Everything seems to be changing.
How many planets are there?
Oh, I think they're back to 8. Right, are they at
now 8 and not Pluto anymore?
It always was 9 for centuries. For centuries, it was 9.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not centuries, but since they found Pluto,
and then there was a question about Planet X or something. Whether that was
the idea of Planet X.
The idea of Planet X. Yeah.
Now, according to chat, I was right. There's 8.
Yeah. Okay. Look what we did.
He might be wrong.
We asked the AI to tell us.
Well, there was a movement. Movement to put Pluto and its moon back as a dual planet.
Yeah.
Like a special classification. And there were people pushing, for other, and it's all subjective. I mean, that doesn't, it doesn't really change anything regardless. I always joke. I always like to harass people that really love math because I don't like math.
I don't like math either.
A lot of us don't. But I always joke with them. I tell them, math's not real. And they're like, what do you mean math's a universal language? I explain, there's this paradox with math. You can't prove math exists without using math.
Yeah.
So you can't, and people say, well, if you put 12 apples on, once you say 12, you're using math. You just have apples on the table.
How many are there? Well, you have to count to find out.
Exactly. Well, the thing is though, or you just have a bunch of apples. I mean, I'm being, facetious and taking the point, but the point is math is just a language. Right? People don't even realize there's multiple types of math that aren't like the main. Like the Sumerians had a different. Well, we still have remnants of it. That's why we have a 60 base second. They used a different type of math. So math itself is just a tool, and people tend to view it as this universal language or a universal system to interpret, and it's not really, And so, anyway, I guess the tangent I'm going off with here is a lot of this stuff is artificially constructed the way we look at it. And so when we approach these strange things, sometimes you have to remember that the baselines that people are using aren't really baselines sometimes, And so when you approach these legends, sometimes you have to step back and look at different angles, you know, so there's not, and sometimes things are just straightforward too, you know.
Yeah, no, sometimes they, you know, it can be very compelling evidence and you build that foundation, but what's underneath is sand. You know what I mean? It's not a stable thing. And then you can build the most complex system, but if you aren't using it in the correct way, it's going to fall over. You know, I totally agree with you with math. And then plus even getting into further nerdology, you know, quantum computing, quantum mathematics, they've proven multiple universes that we can't find. They've proven this is all a simulation. You know what I mean? They've proven how can you have a computing system of zeros and ones like binary and you can't even get to one? And I was like, you can't get to 1, 0, 1. It's like 0, 0.01, 0.001, 0.00.
Yeah.
Like, and is that between 0 and 1? I'm like, well, yeah, technically. They're like, there you go.
I don't like any of that math. Sorry.
But again, I'm not like anti-science. I just, you know, it's
no, I get it. Yeah.
Part of the problem is with, you know, you see this, and I see this because I'm in academia, is lots of times, you know, there's a couple problems when you approach this stuff. First of all, people tend to just believe what they see on TV. Then people, there's this tendency of siloism where people kind of learn in silos and don't learn about other things that can affect it. And, you know, in the past, that wasn't as much the case, but now you see that a lot, even though there's attempts to break that down. But, you know, folklore is one of the great areas where you can do that. You can use history, you can use sociology, you can use people's personal experiences. You know, the person doesn't have to have any training. You're just getting their story, finding out what they experienced, you know. And so, you know, people use psychology, they use all kinds of things and bring it together to try to interpret something. So it gives you a little more tools.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite folklore?
My favorite, you know, my favorite legend, actually, my favorite, especially my Pittsburgh legend, is the story of the, I heard this growing up. It's probably the first Pittsburgh legend I heard, the story of the lost bomber of the Monongahela. The plane that disappeared is part urban legend, part conspiracy theory, but it's this plane that disappeared in the Monongahela River in 1956, a B-25 bomber, and it disappeared and was never seen again. And the B-25 is this kind of classic tale where, you know, it was in the 1950s, height of the Cold War, 1956, these guys left from Nellis Air Force Base and flew to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma and Selfridge in Michigan. And they were supposed to go to Olmsted and Harrisburg, then to Andrews. But the plane was a B-25 by that point, wasn't being used very, very much. And it had a whole bunch of high-ranking people on it and people with high security clearances on it. Mm-hmm. And they were flying to, their official mission was to transport airplane parts, which seemed like a waste of like 2 majors, 2 captains, and these high security clearance people. But anyway, they end up, something happened. They started losing all their fuel over Westmoreland County. They had to turn around and come back. And they radioed Pittsburgh International Airport to clear a runway, but they were losing fuel too fast. So they radioed Allegheny County Airport, even though they were probably closer to Greensburg. And no one ever figured out why they didn't land near Greensburg. But they called the county airport. They're flying there. And right when they catch sight of the Monongahela River, the engines sputter to a halt. And this is January 31st. The air temperature was 28, just a hair warmer than today. And the water temperature was exactly 32. So pretty much it was like crashing on a day like this, at least out here in Pittsburgh. But the plane, it was 4:10 in the afternoon, so it was still light. In fact, it was rush hour. So the plane comes down, barely cleared what was then the Homestead High Level Bridge, now the Homestead Grays Bridge, and crashed. They did a water landing on the Mon, and only 4 of the crew were able to get out. 2 drowned in the plane, and the water was freezing. And people, a Baldwin cop jumped in to rescue one guy, and tugboats picked them up. And this all unfolds, you know, with people watching, right? So this definitely happened. And they eventually get the captain to the shore. His name was Major Dotson, the guy that was flying the plane. And as soon as they get to the dock, the tugboat, there's already 2 guys in suits there that walk on, kick the crew off the boat, take Major Dotson, who has hypothermia, into the cabin of the boat, and they interrogate. They do something with them for 5 or 6 minutes. Then they let them all go to the hospital, and the nurses are instructed not to let anyone talk to them, and they're not allowed to ask them questions unless they're health questions. And so they're all kind of sequestered at various hospitals, and they start looking for the plane. Well, the Coast Guard cutter from Sewickley comes up to look for it, and Army Corps of Engineers, the River Patrol, and then the towboats and stuff from J&L and the other companies, Dreveau, go out to help. And they end up searching for 4 weeks in total and claim they can't find the plane. And then, according to the government, the plane is still in the Monongahela River. Now, a B-25 has a 70-foot wingspan. It's about 50 feet long. With the landing gears up, it would be about 13 feet high. The Mon floods at 18 feet. And the Mon's about where it went in is about 800 feet across. It went in near Beck's Run, finally submerged near Beck's Run. And so the plane shouldn't be that hard to find. They've never lost anything that large in the river.
Yeah.
But rumors circulated pretty quickly that people saw in the middle of the night, either the first night or a couple nights later, the plane taken out at the dock at J&L, having the wings cut off, put onto a barge, and the body of the plane put on another barge and taken down over the Emsworth Lock and Dam to the Sewickley Coast Guard Station, where then it was supposedly taken to Oakdale and then maybe Wright-Patterson or somewhere else.
Yes.
And over the years, there's been lots of reports of this. And when I was at the History Center, we actually worked with the B-25 recovery group that thought the plane was there. We went out and side scan sonar at the whole river bottom and put divers in and everything. And we never found anything. I think they took it out. If you see the crash report, there's actually 2 or 3 nights into the search, they canceled the search because of fog. So all the volunteers went home. Yeah, and all the volunteers went home. And then I checked the weather records from that time. And it doesn't appear there's no reports of fog on that day from the other weather records. So I think that might be the night they took it out, and it just vanished from there.
I wonder why.
Yeah, very suspicious, especially since you have civilians who saw it go down.
Yeah. The crash report's still redacted. Yeah, crash report's still redacted.
Why?
Redacted,
all these years later.
Why?
Yeah.
Wonder
what year was this?
That was 56.
56, okay.
The entire crew's dead. I talked to the pilot in the year 2000, and as soon as he knew what I was asking about, he hung up.
So what do you think? What do you think maybe...
So there's a couple theories, and the thing is, people forget too, the government used to cover up stuff a lot.
They still do.
Yeah, they always do. Yeah. But it's kind of default practice, right? Even if it's not something secret, they cover up the fact they made a mistake often.
Oh yeah, just as important.
And so there was rumors. It came from Nellis, where they were testing nuclear stuff out near there. Went to an interesting thing I think might be plausible is it went to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, we had been continuing our against our treaty. The treaty that we pushed for. We were still testing chemical and biological weapons out there in Oklahoma.
Oh.
And it was around near that base, from what I've been able to tell. And in the 50s, because this ties to another more famous conspiracy theory, but with Frank Olson and the CIA. But there's some evidence now that he was about to spill information that we were using chemical weapons during the Korean War. When we said we weren't. But anyway, so that there's there was something chemical on it. Some people think there might have been an extra passenger. There's rumors that an extra person was pulled from the river. There may be somebody like a defector or something, or there was an advanced communication system at the time that later became public. That they were using for radar I guess it was a radar / communication system that eventually became fairly well known and used. But at the time, it was still a prototype, and there's some people think that was on the plane, and they were afraid to leave it in the river in case someone would come and get it. The interesting thing is they claim the plane was never taken out of the river. Those other 2 guys never got out of the plane, but their bodies somehow washed up 3 or 4 months later near Wood Street in downtown Pittsburgh on the banks of the Mon, even though they never supposedly got out of the back of the plane. And so that was always kind of unusual as well.
You got to cover up if there's still 2 on there and you took it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Think of that.
Crazy information.
It doesn't surprise me one bit, Thomas. It doesn't at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, right, Pat, I mean, Pittsburgh, You're not terribly far away. Let's just say things have been flown further to get the right pet.
Yeah.
Fascinating stories, fascinating everything, Thomas. Honestly,
Yeah.
thank you so much for.
It was
for your
great to
time
have you
today.
on, Tom.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Take this time now. Time's yours. Tell everybody where they can find you, anything you want to promote, and your books, everything. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, my books are on. My latest book is The Witch of the Monongahela, Folk Magic in Early Western Pennsylvania. But my other books, Legends and Lore of Western PA, Ghosts of Southwestern Pennsylvania, Gangs and Outlaws of Western Pennsylvania, and the ones we mentioned at the beginning, Supernatural Lore of Pennsylvania. That has the werewolf stories in it for anyone interested in those, which is a Pennsylvania occult history, lore, and haunted roads, and others. You can find my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, from the publisher, the History Press. They're in bookstores. They're even in CVS and Rite Aids and Targets and other places. So they're all over the place. But certainly I appreciate anyone buying and reading them. And they have all kinds of stories about Pennsylvania and weird things that happened and kind of, legends, ghost stories, witchcraft, monsters, and just strange things. So
great. So glad you came on.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thomas. And go out, everybody listening to this, go out and buy the book, buy his books. I'll put a link in the show notes on the archives, Thomas, for you, to Amazon or what have you. So people can just check our archives or our podcast to see the show notes, to click on it and get there. And even if you go into a traditional, brick and mortar store, Thomas would appreciate if you take it off the shelf and bring it to the very front too.
It is in the front.
Well, then never mind.
His is in the front.
Yeah. Okay,
well, at least in
put it on the
Greensburg,
escalator.
anyways. Greensburg, Pennsylvania. It's in the front.
But
okay, have a great one.
Yeah, have a good night, Thomas.
Thanks.
Great. It was a great show. Well, go ahead. Let's talk about after all that stuff. I don't think we can match it. But
No, that was a wonderful, wonderful guest. We love the folklore and everything. I love interviews like that because it's just all of his hard work and dedication really came out for all of that. You can tell he's done a lot of work. Well,
it's nice. It's nice to have someone from the area.
That's true.
Come on too, and I'd like to promote him. But it was a neat seeing his in the front. Mine was like I said, in the back. Do you want to bring mine in the front of the?
Yeah. Okay. So Jenny's, you go and bring it from out the back and put it in the bathroom or something.
That's not nice. Wow, we like getting to what's going on out there in the crazy world. Geez, I don't know I don't even know what to say about all that's going on.
Well, I made a little clip for people. Just a quick overview of everything that I would like to show and then express some thoughts that I had on it. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, Jenny, and then I'll talk about it.
And now in Southern California, where the devastation is just incomprehensible. There are now 6 wildfires burning throughout Southern California. Nearly 2,000 homes, businesses, and other structures have been destroyed in the Eaton and Palisades fires, and that number is expected to rise. So far, the wind-driven flames have killed 5 people and forced more than 100,000 people to evacuate.
But something this big and this fast that, kind of just wiped out the whole town was something that I personally, and I think a lot of people from around here, never saw coming. I just hope, the Palisades can come together and, figure out how we can all pitch in and try and build this,
These
town
are
back
the
up
shocking
to
scenes
the great place
as
that it was.
wildfires rage across the Los Angeles area, prompting a state of emergency and forcing over 30,000 people to flee their homes. Fire in Pacific Palisades, home to many celebrities, exploded from 10 acres to over 3,000 acres on Tuesday, driven by powerful Santa Ana winds reaching 50 miles per hour.
Again, the good news at this point is we look right across here at a charred American flag that somehow was not burned. It is blackened, but it is still there, Tram. and it's barely flapping in the wind right now, but everybody is on the edge of their seat. The images you had at the top of the show, as far as you look up there, they're burning. Every home was reduced to rubble. It's like this little place was wiped off the map, erased. And look, if you look more closely, you've got aluminum ladders here. You've got the back of a barbecue grill that survived. This little dolly here, this little dolly somehow survived, but all the rubber is burned off the wheels. And to show you how dynamic this fire is, all of this is cool to the touch. This burned like 2 days ago. Within the last half hour, we looked up, and a big, beautiful 2-story home, can you imagine a home on the top of that bluff, looking over the Pacific Ocean, just caught fire?
So
that's crazy.
That is crazy. That's a little more unbelievable than crazy. I'm going to let's see, where is it? I'm going to share this, just what I can show people here. Can you see that, Jenny?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is a United States patent. I'll be going on more about this as the days go on, but this is patent number 9511881B1 from 2016. And just a little overview. This is by space engineer Rick Martin there, which is also another suspicious thing. This was filed in 2015, and in just a little over a year, it was patented, which other people, it takes tons and tons of time. But this patent here is, you see it right here, America. A dispersed space-based laser weapon, a triangular laser weapon system that here on this figure, you can see from outer space uses solar generators. Obviously, it's much more powerful because it's out of our atmosphere collecting all of the solar gamma rays. And look what it's doing. It's firing patterns down to the earth. And this caught my eye because of this. Well, let me get to it down here. On this page, Jenny, there's the sun. Jenny, here's the space-based weapon. What is it doing? That looks like a boat, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's catching a boat on fire. What do you think that is?
I can't tell. Is that a building?
Looks like buildings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In the patent, they have this laser-based weapon that some say they saw beams coming down from space engulfing buildings and ships on fire. Furthermore, and this, my whole point to all of this, America, is open your eyes, because I had to put facts in there. An aluminum ladder is aluminum. It's a relatively light metal. It's not going to be as strong as, iron and steel and all of those other things. Aluminum melts at just about double the temperature of what your oven can get to. It's not very sturdy. The minimum forest fire temperatures are 1400 degrees. Now, the last time I checked, I know I don't like math. I know we got into that segment last time, but the last time I checked, 1400 was higher than 1200. So why didn't those melt? Why didn't that melt? Or, okay, well, maybe it wasn't burning for long enough. All right, then how did it get through that without at least melting portion of it? It doesn't make sense.
No,
it does not make sense. It looks like it was planted there and just maybe roughed up and dirtied up a little bit so it can make for good news coverage. That's metal. That American flag they showed, that's a flag. That's fabric. That's gone. That's going on any kind of fire. People use a lighter to burn flags. You've seen that, right? How did that survive? A lot of this stuff here, America, doesn't make sense, and I want to open your eyes to what they do in plain sight. They do this in plain sight, everyone. They do it in plain sight. They want you to question everything about your government or everything about the world. They are using this high, rich area because they think you will be like, oh, whatever. It's just people. It's just celebrities. They have money. People. Yeah. That's the practice run. Where do you think the next one's going to be?
Yeah.
So that's my little, soapbox moment.
So the thing is, why are they doing it? It's like, why are they doing it? Or who is doing it? Who is doing it? Is it?
There are things that are in LA that
The
you and I
tunnels
both know
underneath?
are there. Well, yeah, that's a part of it, but there are changes that some people want to see in LA. There are different areas where people live in LA, and that is a demographic, or some are more conservative, some are more liberal. Some of these houses that you see have burned down are older celebrities, are male, are who I would identify as more on the conservative side. I think that this is to send a message to people that they need to conform or they will lose everything. And this is just a warning, because a house can be rebuilt, right? Your car, you can buy a new car, and especially when they have the money. It's a way to strike a message on a big scale that will affect your decisions later to come on. There's something to be said about a cabal, a new world order, whatever you want to call it, infiltrating Hollywood to send visual messages in the way of film to people. I wouldn't be shocked if this was a retaliatory act to get people to stay in line. Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not controlling messages, you don't have the power.
I read something different on that. I read that it had something to do with the Diddy trial, that most of those people that actually their houses are destroyed are on the list. Now, I don't know if that's true or not.
Really?
Yeah.
Like on the list that have been there, or the list to testify? Or
Tom Hanks' house, Paris Hilton's house.
Yeah.
These are just, well, they're all in the same area, but that I'll have to next time. I'll see if I can pull it up and show it to you.
What about that lasting image that I put on there of the triangular fire starting at the same time?
And that goes back to was it the Templars? It's a sign.
They're a triangle.
Yeah.
The Knights of the Templar?
Yeah, I think
it very well could be. But it's just, it's a calculated strike. Who's to say that laser's even visible? It might not be.
Well, I just found out that Donald Trump is going to be telling everybody. Let me tell you what it says. From the UFOs community on Reddit, and from Trump, Donald Trump said, "I'm going to give you a report on drones about 1 day into my administration." So he has information about that. So that's interesting. It could, because some people thought that it was the drones that were doing it, but I didn't see any drones. I saw lasers. Yeah. I saw that image where in Eaton, is that what it's called?
Eaton, California. Yeah.
He went through. You saw the was it on that? Was it on here?
No, it wasn't on here, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was somebody saw. Let me see if I can pull it up on TikTok.
Phoenix rising from the ashes. That's right, Stacey.
Before we go.
Yeah, go ahead and look for it. But I tell you, they can do things right in front of your face now. And especially with the advancement of AI and AI imagery. I was completely fooled. I was about to send you a picture of the Hollywood sign on fire.
Yeah, before I like that.
Yeah, that might be all right. But,
what was that called? Fox News.
What? Newsmax, News Nation?
They're calling it a UFO because they don't know what it is. Video.
Yeah, Nicole, have you seen any drones over your way? They're still out and about over here.
Oh, no, they're still out.
Yeah, they're the drones that that are out over here. We definitely still see them. Yeah, chime in the chat if you have any, if you've seen any yourselves. But they're definitely still around here. And I think, this is playing right into their hands, Jenny. I'm just going to tell you this. This is playing right into their hands because this was a thing, And people, the week before Christmas, they were all, oh man, look at these drones over here. People were all taking videos, pointing it up to the sky in their own community groups on Facebook, in their own like little town chats and everything like that. And the holidays come and they're still out and about. But us as people, we're not talking about it as much. We're not talking about it as we should. And you know why? Because like you said, Jenny, we're getting more and more desensitized to it.
Yeah.
We have legitimate UFOs in the sky and people aren't talking about it.
I know. It's so stupid. They're not.
Yeah.
Let me see.
That goes from the fire. What in the world
Can you see that?
Was that?
Yes. Everybody take a look up at the top screen in the smoke. You see that right there?
That goes from the fire, as you can see here.
And it goes right to left.
Green out of range. I
See that?
don't know what this. I wasn't the only one that saw it. There are many other people on.
There's a couple other ones too. I saw.
Weird. Did you see it? What do you think it is?
I'll tell you. Wait a minute.
What in
Stop.
the world?
There was another one that was on while they were doing a news conference. Let's see if I can get that one.
Stacey, you mentioned that guy's channel before, and I've checked it out, and it is a good channel to look at. I didn't see that one today, but I'll have to go look at it. That's fascinating. UFO flying out of the fire. I'll have to check into that because I have been looking at his channel almost daily. I just missed that one.
It's not what we wanted to go out, but we're going to try and fix it. We are experiencing, we're in the middle of a crisis. And communication is very important, and people are tense right now. And that's why we are going out of our way as a team to communicate at least twice a day with all of you so we get the best information out. So we'll fix it. Thank you so much, everybody.
I don't know if that was it. I don't think
there is a lengthy briefing from LA City and LA County leaders, including the end there, talking about that alert, which was sent out to millions of people saying that you have an evacuation warning.
But how about them running out of water?
They don't.
The county
basically sent out by accident.
How
well, that's
in
their.
the
They were
hell is that
trying. They were
okay?
trying to cut.
Stacey saw it.
Trying to cut funds, but they cut funds to the.
They cut
fire
funds to
department, which is
water.
so
They
stupid.
cut funds to water for putting out a fire. I just don't understand how that is okay. You have a drought. You have this. There's plenty of other reasons naturally for a water shortage, but because you cut funds, and now you can't get them back up. It's a lack of foresight. It is pinching pennies to make budgets meet. And it's a form of stealing from the public. You cannot protect the public. It's simple.
Oh, I want to show you something. Alec Baldwin's brother, he said he's going around saying that this was done intentionally because it's Hollywood, because they need to pay. But this is really bizarre. Wait, I have to show you this one. Listen to him.
And not one will be able to escape.
Is he crazy?
It is all of them.
I think he's trying to be
and not
somebody.
One
But he's a nut anyway.
will be able to escape.
He might have wet brain.
But he's been going on and on and on saying that Hollywood needs to
It is
cut.
all of them.
Yeah.
They need to pay.
All of them. Maybe he's going to have his own thing. His own
What?
movement.
I invited friends and
So,
family on a small
what is
getaway
that?
to try my new steak.
I don't know. But yeah, Stacey, they do. When they put us in a fear state, it keeps the frequency low. And thus more likely to do what they say instead of raising vibrations, raising frequencies, or becoming spiritual, more spiritual. Yep. How many of us got a false evacuation warning? Are you out there, Stacey? Did you get a evacuation warning? Yeesh. And yes, that was a terrible filter on there. I was hoping he didn't have that much surgery that he actually looks like that. But who knows? Yeah.
No.
What are we gonna do?
I don't know. People are saying Jesus is coming. Oh, the end of the world. How about that alien lady? Oh, jeez.
Oh, the alien lady. I don't know if you guys been seen this woman. I think her name's Erin or something. But she claims to be communicating and with aliens. And to set her apart from everyone else, she has like this necklace, but it's around her forehead with a pendant in the middle, and then it
I'll
goes to the
find if
other
I can
side.
find her. I can't remember what her
And
name was.
so Stacy got one, and it was an error. How about that, Stacy?
There she is.
That's fascinating. I got one. It was an air evacuation warning. Still terrifying. I mean, it scares the hell out of you. It's false fear. I'm so sorry that happened to you. But this woman's claiming over the last 2 weeks now that she's been popular, that she's been communicating with aliens. One of the ones. Here she is.
So that's the topic of today's message from the aliens. Because they are coming in January. That is
The aliens are coming in January, guys.
They're already here.
Messages about corruption on the planet and how to move forward in unity.
But she's really
the gift of interdimensional communication, which enables
the
Emily,
recent
not
one.
Erin.
She was saying that is this the one from? Yeah, this is today. Yeah,
But
this is
she's-
today.
Today is January 9th, and I have another message from the aliens that I received telepathically through the gift of clairsentience. I sense what they're trying to tell me. I do my best to put it into words.
Like she gets
on
and
my
puts it on an
and I
iPad.
check with them to make sure that I interpreted it correctly before I share it with you. So that's what I've got today. Today, they wanted me to start with a question that's on a lot of our minds. Can they help with the LA fires? I asked Alien Enki what he had to say about that.
Alien Inky.
We see the LA fires. and we
Oh,
wish we could
I
help
want to
them.
meet that
We haven't
alien.
completed our arrival process yet.
Calm down,
We're
Acacio.
limited in how we can help. They're
Look
concerned
at
that
him. He looks like
additional
my
harm to
character in my
humans and
book.
animals if we attempt to intervene now. Also, since a wildfire is a natural
Wouldn't that be
occurrence on
funny
Earth,
if that was
it would
true?
be inappropriate
Yeah.
for us to intervene, especially if our intervention would
It's
risk additional
inappropriate
loss of
for
life.
them to intervene in the
Next,
fires.
they wanted me to
Look
thank
what
you for
Nicole
the love
said.
you've been sending to the
What'd she
orbs,
say?
whether you can see them or not.
What's on her
It's
forehead?
working. It's making a
No, I know that's
difference.
there's another
Messages,
dude on here that
feeling
has
your love.
something
They
like
love
that.
answering your
And
questions.
I think she
Maybe you
copied
want
off
to
of
ask them
him.
if there's a
I
name
can't
you'd
remember.
like to
He's
be called.
bald.
If you can see them with your eyes, maybe you want to ask
I think I'm
them
going to get something like that
if
and
you
wear
can
it to the
hear
show
me
next week just for
blink 3
shits and
times.
giggles.
Do
They
it.
love interacting
Do
with
it.
you,
I
so
think that would
thanks
be
for doing
wonderful.
that.
But she
I
says
asked
the
aliens to
aliens are
check to
coming,
make sure
guys.
that
So
anything
we have to get off here and prepare, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
Got to get off here now, and I got to go prepare
I
for
got to
the
go
aliens to
stock
come.
canned foods, rice, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So we'll be next week. Do we have a guest for next week? I can't remember.
Yes, I think we do.
We do. Okay. Who knows where I'm at? Okay, guys. We will see you next week. Same place, same channel.
Be safe,
Thank
everybody.
you so much for
Stay
being in the
weird
chat with
and-
us.
Yes, thank you for the time.
Definitely. Thank you for all your love and support.